eclipse is going to be the same position as the sun's position. The eclipse point is the lunar point as well as the solar point for a solar eclipse. So we look at returns of the moon, a lunar return, when the moon goes back to the position it was in the eclipse chart. And generically speaking, a lunar return is a chart that's set for the moon coming back every 28 days or so to the position in the natal chart, the birth chart. In this case, our birth chart is the eclipse chart, so to speak. And the lunar return point, or the point that the moon was in the original chart, happens to be the eclipse point as well, because that's what defines that solar eclipse. So we simply set up lunar return charts to the eclipse chart over the next 5-6 months, and we then get particular accent points. What we look for in those lunar return charts are planetary aspects that activate dynamics that were revealed in the original eclipse chart. For example, in the original eclipse chart, we might find a square of Mars and Venus. And in one of the lunar return charts, there is a trine of Mars and Venus. That means it's going to activate that particular energy in certain ways. So we'll pay more attention to those kinds of patterns. Eclipse studies can be enormously complex, but they're very, very rewarding in terms of letting us know what happens in the markets. It's a useful tool to work with on an ongoing basis. Please note as well that market turns do not always happen exactly on the date of the eclipse. In fact, that's fairly rare. It was so interesting with the media. I was consulted by Chicago Tribune, Bridge News Service, London, wasn't London Times, what was it, London Observer, I guess it was. One of the London papers contacted me prior to the big eclipse last August, in August of 1999, because this particular eclipse has gotten so much publicity, being associated with Nostradamus predictions. There are a lot of attention being paid in the popular press, amongst the astrological press, and uniformly the attention was focused on the day of the eclipse itself. And these people were asking my opinion as a financial astrologer, what's going to happen to the markets on that day? And I think some of them were quite distressed to say that when I didn't say the market's going to plunge on that day. Because in fact it's fairly rare, even for a very powerful eclipse like that, to see it trigger an event on the same day. If we get it on the same day, it's certainly worth noting.
What was
But sometimes
degree? That was in Leo, what, at 18 degrees?
I think it was 18 degrees Leo. I have to go back and double check, but I think that's correct. Okay. So, does that answer some of your concerns about eclipses in general? I mean, what we're looking at here is a cycle, and we're looking at any type of planetary transits, but specifically lunar transits as well, okay? Because they will hit the most frequently. Are there other questions before we move on? I mean, feel free to interject at any time, of course. So just lunar returns and planetary transits there. Okay, one of the things that we want to do in this last session together is to provide kind of an overview, a little bit of a perspective about financial astrology. And along the way, we've mentioned the works of certain authors and some of the study that's gone into the field. It's certainly a field that has captured people's attention in various ways over the years. But it is by far getting more attention now, and greater advances are being made in the astrology of the markets than have ever been made before. And so we want to get a picture, a vision of really where things can go from here as well. But let's acknowledge some of the individuals that have put work into